Morning, everyone. Welcome to London's Calling. Finally here. Got a nice early slot, so in theory, for me, this should be it, and I can then relax. Last year in this slot, the Wi-Fi failed horribly, so it might not be as relaxing as I was hoping. And also, as soon as my machine plugged in, it rebooted. So we shall see what happens. Could be exciting. So welcome to this talk, Skilling Up Your Copilot with Custom Actions. So AI, right? AI assistant. A little bit about me. I'm the CTO for Salesforce at Credera. So everybody knows me, who knows me from BrightGen. BrightGen were acquired by Credera, so I'm still doing the same job, just for a larger organization. And there are other technologies within the organization, but I still focus purely on Salesforce. 37 years this year, 37 years in the industry, man and boy. 16 years in Salesforce, and 1 year playing around with generative AI. I'm also Salesforce MVP Hall of Fame, so I do quite a lot of these kind of talks in the community. So very svelte agenda. Just got 4 things to talk about. What is Copilot? What are actions? That'll be the quick bit. Custom action examples. I've got 4 of those, and I'll try and do Q&A at the end of each of those, because I think it's probably quite useful to do it that way. And then lessons learned. What did I learn so that you don't have to? What did I suffer through? So first off, what is Copilot? This is generated from OpenAI GPT-4o, and this is intended to show an AI assistant to a human. It's augmenting a human. And that's what Copilot is. It's your willing AI assistant that is able to help you get stuff done. And it's conversational AI. So this isn't pushing things to you as you navigate around and as you do work. It's not popping up ideas. It's not saying, here's a good response to give to a user. It's something where you ask it a question. So in this case, I've asked it to find an opportunity and create a follow-up task, which is something I blogged about a while back. And it does that and says, yeah, I've done that for you. And it gives me that. And I think the first thing to call out here is this is really different to the way we normally interact with Salesforce data. So normally what happens is you navigate around, you go to a record page, you click and you edit. It's still really forms-based if you think about it. And you save that or you press a button and something happens. In this, you just type in natural language. You just ask for something and hope that that makes sense. Hope that there's an action there that's going to actually be able to handle that. It's also trusted. That's the key thing. And I think this is still the USP for Salesforce, is the Einstein trust layer. I'm not going to talk too much about that because I could talk about this one all day. But basically, what it means is that when you ask, if I ask it to summarize an opportunity I don't have access to, it will say no, not going to give you that, unless I create a custom action which breaks security, which I can do. But then, if I've done that, I've taken a conscious decision to do that. It will mask any sensitive data, any PII, before calling out to an external large language model. And when it comes back in, it will check it for toxicity. So Salesforce is very cautious about this, and I think, as I say, I think this is a real USP for them, because I think a lot of organizations that don't have a lot of internal capability are quite worried about AI and what might happen. So I think having this gives them a lot of comfort. How useful it is to those that are real experts in AI may be a little bit different. And the previous thing, it's a trusted assistant, a trusted AI assistant for CRM. So it's not ChatGPT, right? It works with your Salesforce data. You decide on the capabilities. Ask it what you should have for lunch, and it won't have any idea. It'll give you just a really unhelpful knowledge article saying, is this any good? It wants to help, but it needs to have the data. So you could get it to tell you what you have for lunch, but you would have to track the contents of your fridge in Salesforce, and you'd have to have a custom action that looks at that and then ask the LLM, given these ingredients, what can I have for lunch? So basically, as I say, it's not ChatGPT. And I think that's something that sometimes takes users slightly by surprise. They think, great, I've got ChatGPT in Salesforce. I'll just ask it loads of weird questions. That won't really work very well, unless you've got a load of weird actions. So what are actions? So this is my Swiss Army knife AI assistant. So I said I want it to look like a Swiss Army knife. And typically for AI, we've got like 6 Swiss Army knives attached to a mobile phone. So awesome. So these are skills, effectively, is the way I like to think about it. They're skills that Copilot possesses, and those skills allow it to do something. So it can go and retrieve information, I can get it to update records, it can provide advice, it can generate content, but it needs to be configured with those skills. As it stands, if you take all of those away, it won't be able to do anything. Everything you ask for, it will say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And you can configure that. You're in control of what actions it has. So where actions come into, this is kind of what happens when you make a request to Copilot. There's the initial conversation, you ask it to do something, that then gets processed, that gets parsed, that natural language, and then it goes into the planning stage where it tries to figure out, you've asked me to do this, what actions do I have that could help me actually solve that problem, take that action, do that task? And in this case, it's figured out that it's got 3 of them. It needs to identify the record, draft an email, and it may need to revise the email. And then this is where the actions come in. This is where it's going to actually execute those actions. And those actions can be flows, they can be prompts, they can be Apex codes, and I'll show each of those. They can also call out to APIs, so anything you can do in those tools, you can do within Copilot as well. And it can be data that comes from your CRM. It can come from Data Cloud if you're using Data Cloud. If you're not using Data Cloud, as we saw in the demo jam, you're going to get a call from an AE asking to use Data Cloud at some point in time, so we might as well just give in and do it. And then there's an outcome, and information gets sent back to Copilot, but the way you send it back also dictates how it gets displayed, how it's rendered back to the user. You haven't got a huge amount of control, but you can make it look reasonably nice. So there's two types of actions. There's standard actions developed by Salesforce. So these are very generic. These are things like going and querying a record, provide me a list of opportunities, that kind of thing. But there aren't many right now. So if you're working with Copilot right now, it's going to be quite a development-heavy project. You're going to have to build a lot of stuff. I keep hearing that there's like a whole load of them ready to go, but I suspect this is Salesforce being cautious and probably product and legal are having a nice tussle behind the scenes. But they're going to be generic because they've got to try and fit across all their customers. It can't be specific to your business. And then you've got the custom ones. So these are developed by you, these are created by you, and these have the specific capabilities that you need. So Salesforce aren't going to generate those, going to create those because it only really fits for a couple of customers. It's not worth their while doing it. That's where consultants and the like come in. So why would we create custom actions? So at the moment, creating custom actions, because there aren't very many standard actions, that will probably change. This will be one of those things where the early adopters put in a load of work and then gradually throw it all away as Salesforce come and do exactly the same thing. But consider the question, show my top opportunities. So a standard action is probably going to do something like this. It'll pull in your high-value open opportunities, and it'll also show you the closed ones, because you said top, you didn't say top open. So it'll just show you high value. That's almost certainly what it will do. But actually, what a top opportunity means to you, it may be high-value open opportunities, but they also, maybe they have to close in the next month. Maybe you already need to have a quote sent to a buyer contact, or it might be for a key person. So it may be that actually a top opportunity to you means something very different. There's very little chance of Copilot guessing or figuring out that's what you specifically want, as opposed to every other customer. So what we're talking about here is you're bringing in your institutional knowledge, the nuances of how your business works, which are different to everybody else's. I did try and get AI to generate a picture of institutional knowledge, and it just kept giving me factories with cogs in it, which really didn't help at all. So if I have to explain it, it's probably not a great image. But that's the purpose of them. So I think even when Salesforce has a really broad range of standard actions, we're still going to be creating custom actions because we're going to need that institutional knowledge. So this is going to be the longer bit. Custom action examples, again, another AI generated. And if you ask it to represent custom action, it always likes to, ooh, blimey. It always likes to write the words in there. And even if you say, please do not use the text custom action, it will always write that text in there. So anyway, yes, I'm going to show 4 of these. Normally the way I would do these sessions is hold the Q&A to the end, but because they're all different things, I think we'll try and do a couple of minutes of Q&A at the end of each of them after I've talked through them, because, as I say, different technology underpinning them. So the first one is a flow. And is this going to come in? It is not. Okay, thought this might happen. So we will do the other way. So this is a video of my flow action. So open up Copilot, try not to fall off the stage. So what I'm asking for here, initially I'll show my opportunities closing in the next 90 days. That's standard Salesforce. I don't need to do anything clever or different about that. I've edited this video. It's not this fast. That's one thing I would say. It does take a while. It seems to get better the more you do, but it gives me back some opportunities and I can click to view more. So here's my list of opportunities closing, access to Lestrade's team. I like Sherlock Holmes. So now I can say, okay, push that opportunity out by 90 days. So this is my custom action. Given an opportunity, it'll go and figure out what that opportunity is, and then it will add 90 days to it. So now it's gone out to the 5th of December, and that's updated the screen as well, because this all uses the user interface API, so there's nice connectivity between them as well. Right, if I get back to my demo, where have you gone? Okay, back to the flow. Yeah, so it's basically pushing an opportunity out. So that's the text that I've used, because that's what my users think of it as. They don't think I would like to move that close date. They think I want to push it out. That's the terminology they use, so that's how my instruction works. So it's simply moving a close date out by a specified number of days. And I should say at the moment, Copilot doesn't have any actions which update data, so you would be doing custom actions. It's very simple logic, and it's simple return type. And probably the simple return type is the key thing for me about doing it in a flow. I should also say I'm not going to show you the flows and the Apex behind this, because I figure you all know how to write flows in Apex. That's not what we're here for. What I will do is just explain the bits that make those flows and Apex, etc., available for Copilot. So to make this available to Copilot, the first thing you need is it needs to be an auto-launched flow, no trigger. That's the key thing. Once it's got that type, then when you're creating a new Copilot custom action, it'll appear in the list, which is great. The slight downside is anything that's an auto-launched flow will appear in that list. So if you don't type anything in, you just get a huge list of everything you've got if you've got a lot of automation. So it's always good to think about the naming, to give it a good name. So in this case, it's push opportunity out. I've only got one of those, so that works quite nicely. And then based on that, once I choose it, the description is pulled through verbatim. So pushes an opportunity close date out by the specified number of days, that comes through there. So if I've done a good job with that description, as we all should give good description for our flows, Copilot can use that and I don't have to do any additional configuration. I can if I want, but it's better not to have to do that. So then that's how we've got a custom action based on a flow, but we need to get data in, because I give it an opportunity and I give it the number of days that I want to push that opportunity out by. And that's just basically flow items that are available for input and output. So as you can see here, my opportunity is available for input and output because I want the user to say which opportunity it is, and then I want to show them the updated one once I've finished with it. Then there's my number of days. So this is only available for input because I'm not going to go back and say, oh, I mean, it may say, great, I have pushed out by 90 days, but that's Copilot, that's not me. Something that's really important, available for output, you can only have one of those. If you have two, my experience is it will pick alphabetically the first one. Now that may just be that that's the way it's worked for me and I've been lucky, but that's what happens. So you can find, I think, oh great, I'll push a little bit of additional information out. You do that and suddenly, where did my opportunity go? Why have I just got a number of days now? So always remember that you can send back complex results, but they have to be a single thing that contains lots of other things. And based on those, when I'm configuring my Copilot action again, Copilot will pull them through. So it will pull through not only what type it is, in this case, the candidate opportunity is a record info type. So that's the opportunity whose close date should be moved out. So again, it's pulled that description from the flow. So again, if I've done a good job, if I've given it a good description, I've got far less work to do here. I've marked these inputs as required because I need the opportunity and I need a number of days. There's no good guess default. If I make that not required, Copilot will pick a number of days. Typically, it seems to pick 30 when it's opportunities. It seems to like a month. But I don't think that's a good thing. There's no concept of a good default to that. Every user should specify that. If they don't, it'll ask them, how far do you want to go out? Then candidate opportunity is also an output item. So this is the updated one. It's still a lightning record info. Key thing is showing conversation. If you don't tick the showing conversation box, then the user doesn't know anything about it. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the flows. Do we have any questions on the flow side of things? He said hoping for some because he's allowed time for it. Yes? So this tool can't delete or modify any records? So the question was, this tool can't delete or modify any records. At the moment, it's custom. I'm sure that will come, but I think that's one that they're right to be very cautious about because you don't want to make it too easy for people to modify or delete data without necessarily knowing what they're doing. Hopefully Stefan's nodding up there, that's good. Yes?
It's a good number of days. If you said to push it out by 2 weeks or 3 months, will it work that out?
Yes. Yeah, it does work that out for you. So I did 6 months and it does like 180 days. It does a 30-day month. But yeah, if you just want it to go out by a period of time, it's quite good at Copilot just figures that out. And because I've said I want it in days, it's quite good at converting and giving that to me in days.
Is that a lot of the name of the input? How does it know it's in days? It's just
Yeah, I think that is the fact that the planner is also an AI model itself, so that knows that I need an input in days. I've got something in weeks. Can I convert it? Yes, I can. Yeah.
How do you make the Copilot know that when you are asking to push the opportunities? How does it know which
It knows which action based on the description that I've given it. If I just go back. So I've created my custom action, create a Copilot action, pushes an opportunity close date out by the specified number of days. So I've found it's quite keywordy. So if my users say they want to push a close date out, I think it'll probably do it off the close date as well. I haven't done a huge amount of testing on that. But effectively, your description from your flow that becomes your instructions is the thing that the planner uses to determine, I've got this request, I've parsed it, I've got the sense of it. Now what actions do I have that seem to match that? Doesn't always get it right, especially when you've got a larger number of actions, but it's pretty good. And it's definitely got better in the summer 24 release as well at reasoning about that, I've found. Yeah.
If you do provide an input context, but it's required to, will it go back to the user and ask them?
It depends. No, you'd have to say collect from user, which means that the user must provide it. Where are we? So require input means I definitely want this, and then collect data from user means the user must provide it. So by default, it will make it a required input, but it will assume that it can figure it out itself. I mean, generally speaking, like it can't figure out the opportunity. If I just said push an opportunity out by 30 days, it wouldn't necessarily get the right one. But you'd have to check both of those in order to force the user to type in the name of the record. I mean, typically on this, because it's expecting an opportunity, it would say, sure, I can help you. Which record are you interested in? And sometimes if you've got very similar names, it will say, these all seem to be a good match. Which one of these do you want? And it's all probability. So anything over like 85% probability gets shown to you. Something along those lines anyway. Cool. Brings us to the end of the flow questions. Nice. Let me get back to Apex. So that's, again, not going to work. That's fine. I have it here. You get that up to full screen. Okay, so this is an Apex action that I've got here. So what am I asking for? Oh, show me the spend overview for a contact. So this is basically where I'm going to see the last 120 days spend, the last year spend, the lifetime spend, and any useful information they can tell me about the contact, Jim Moriarty. I said I like Sherlock Holmes, didn't I? So this is one that's got just quite an interesting output. It's got some text at the top, it's got the list of cases with a little bit of commentary above it, and it's got the highest value opportunities with a little bit of commentary about it. So I'm sending back quite a lot of different information, and Copilot is rendering that out reasonably nicely. I'd like to be able to style this a bit better if I could, but can't at the moment. I'm sure that's coming. So that's the Apex action. So let me get back into here. Yeah, so this was my brief for it, my contact spend overview, so the value over the last n days, and this is one where if I don't give it the last n days, it will just assume 30. And it also gives me the last year and the lifetime, because my users always want that, and then I want a list of open opportunities, and also I want to know open cases. So this might be a contact is saying, you need to give me a better deal. I'm like, well, do I need to give you a better deal? Are you a good customer to me? Have you spent money with me? Let's go and have a look. And also, if I'm going to start playing hardball with you, probably need to make sure you're not really unhappy with us and you've got a load of open cases because we've sold you a load of duds. Complex logic, that's probably, it's probably the word complex is doing a bit of heavy lifting there. That's more about reaching into lots of different places. But it's more complicated than the flow, really. But the key thing is the complex return type. So if you were to do that from a flow, you'd have to return an Apex class from that instance from that. And I always figure if I'm delving into Apex anyway, I'll do the whole thing there. But it's that bit. It's how do I get all that information, all that disparate information back to a user. Having enough time. Oh, okay. So there's a bit more to it with Apex. So in order for an Apex, it's effectively a method. You can have a single method within a class with the invocable method annotation to it. And the fact that it's an invocable method makes that available to Einstein Copilot. So I've got my label and my description. Description's really important. Label is effectively the name that'll appear when I'm trying to create the custom action. So in this case, again, I say it's Apex, and I put in the first bit of the label, and it finds it for me. It's contact overview. Again, this will show you every invocable method. So I have some orgs where because it is an invocable method, if I type in like contact, I get sort of 70 methods that look relatively similar. So naming these things is really important as well, because you will be searching for them. Write them down, remember them. And once I've done that, again, it pulls the description through, returns contact summary, yada, 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 pulls the description through there. So again, going back to it, the more work you do on descriptions when you're creating the original flows, Apex, etc., the less work you'll have to do with Copilot. So it's really useful to do. Inputs and outputs in Apex are a bit different, so we're going to look at those in 2 separate slides. So the way inputs and outputs work is effectively they're custom class instances. So I've got this create contact overview. So what I take in is a list of a custom request class called input, and then I'm going to return a list of custom response classes. Those are both lists, and those both take exactly 1 element. So if you put 2 in certain circumstances, you'll get errors, but it'll certainly be ignored. So it's literally 1 element in, 1 element out. They just happen to be contained within a list. So here's my request class, and again, it's invocable. It's invocable variables. So I've got my label of contact, I've got the description, again, very important. It's got a type of contact, and I've given it the name of contact, and same for the number of days. That's an integer, and it's called number of days. Again, quite wordy, more wordy names, I think, than I would typically use in Apex, but that's because they're going to make more sense to Copilot and potentially users if they see any aspect of that. And this is automatically picked up. So again, I don't have to necessarily do anything to say, I want to use this and I want to use these parameters. So with these, I've got the contact to create the summary for. Again, it's a lightning record info. I've got num number, because I can't spell, but it knows what I mean. So this is an intentional example, honestly, of how good Copilot is at handling that kind of thing. Integer type, I haven't been in and ticked all of these things, but these would be required inputs. So again, you do some configuration in the Apex, Copilot picks that up automatically, but you then get a chance to tweak it and change it. So if you're reusing an invocable method that has kind of other purposes, you can tailor it specifically to Copilot to help it understand what action it needs to use. Outputs, this is the interesting thing. I've spent a lot of time playing around with outputs, and again, got a lot better in summer 24, so that's good. So this is my response class. And the reason I did it this way as well is I wanted to use an internal class as well, a class that it wraps up and puts those in so that it can kind of go down multiple levels. So the first thing I've got is my spend summary. Notice the letter A in front of it. By putting the letter A, alphabetic order, that means it comes at the top of the output. So that was quite interesting to find that. It's all a bit basic, but it's good. Cases will be next because it begins with a C, and then ops will be next. And those are wrappers. So those are actually classes in their own right. So I have a little bit of commentary about it. It's always good to explain to the user what these cases are. You can explain why they're showing them. Also, you can put things after them as well. You could extend this class so that the object records that it contains have individual commentary with them. So we've done that kind of thing in the past of like, here's an account, and this is the account spend over the last 365 days. So you can see additional information, or maybe get some advice. You should probably talk to this account because they're very important to you. So you can kind of go down to a lot of depth. However, it's only the top level properties in your response class that will actually get picked up by Copilot. The rest of them it will just figure out. So when these get mapped, what you see here is, the first one is just text, fine, showing conversation. So with these, if I had this as a standard invocable method that I was using somewhere else and actually cases weren't relevant right now, I could just uncheck showing conversation and that wouldn't show it to the user. So if I need to tweak it and hide it and change things, then I can do that as well. But also notice that it's picked up my custom class, Apex class type, C__ Copilot contact overview Rex wrapper. So it knows that that's a particular class in its own right. But again, because these are S objects and that's a string, it knows how to display those through the user interface API. That brings us to the end of Apex. Do you have any questions on the Apex side of things? No questions. Wow, everybody loves Apex. Good stuff, right? Won't even try the prompt template. No one unbeaten. Prompt. I did this on the train this morning, got these. I just thought maybe the Wi-Fi will have a bit of trouble. Good, wasn't it? Otherwise I'd be trying to explain this very badly. Okay, this is a prompt template. This is more creative. This is where we're going out to a large language model. We're not using our existing automation, plain old automation. So what am I asking for here? My most recently created leads. So there's a list of leads, great. Irene Adler, that looks like an interesting one. Go and look at what's been going on with her. We've had a meeting and we've got quite a good description. So that's quite useful. We can probably do something with that. We can probably create an email to follow up on that, what happened there. But I don't really want to draft that from scratch myself, so I just ask it to generate a follow-up lead based on the information that's there. And what we'll see here is, pleasure to meet you at the reception held at the Bohemian Embassy. Irene attended a reception at the Bohemian Embassy in March, so managed to pull that kind of information out. A conversation about the potential for increasing your monthly information fee, that's in there as well. So it's quite good. In this case, what it's done is I've pasted in I've given it a lead record, and I've told it that there is a description filled in there which has a load of useful information, and I've asked it to create an email based on that information that would allow me to go back to that particular lead and see if we can do a bit of business with her. So let's go back to the prompt template. Okay, yeah, so basically generating an email based on that lead record, but it's a free text field with details. So I could try and have a go at that myself in Apex or Flow, but it probably wouldn't end up very well. It's going to be quite hard to write a natural language parser using those technologies. So that's what I want. I want processing of natural language, extracting useful information, and I also want it to create some content. And that's the kind of thing where you really need to go out to a large language model. It's what they're really good at. So again, so with this, prompt templates, I could have one of these, I guess, already for sales emails or something like that, but prompt templates, I'm generally speaking creating from scratch. It's not like I'm reusing existing Apex, existing Flow or anything like that. So in this case, I'm creating a new one. Interestingly, I'm creating it as a flex template. It's really tempting to go for a sales email template because they can be reused as a sales email, as a draft with Einstein. Problem with that is sales emails return their response in JSON format. So you get a subject, you get a body, and you get lots of squigglies, \n's, and it confuses users. And the reason for that is Copilot doesn't do any processing of the response. It shows it verbatim, essentially. So if it comes back in JSON, it assumes that's what your users wanted. So in that case, yeah, you have to flip over and use Flex. And I have confirmed that with Salesforce support as well, working as intended. No issues there. So I'm creating a Flex template. I'm calling it a lead follow-up email. So it's not pulling anything from anywhere else. I'm going to create all this myself from scratch now. And we're generating an email to follow up on a lead. So I can define up to 5 sources, 5 places where I'm going to get data that's going to be used in this request to the large language model. I've only gone with one because I'm only really interested in the lead. So I've called it candidate lead. It's a source type of object. And then once I define it's an object, you can also do free text in here if you want your users just to be able to type in and request something. And the object itself is a lead. So once I've done that, I can then go into the prompt template workspace. So again, not going to talk too much about this. Pretty sure Stefan's covering some of this in his talk this afternoon, so you should absolutely go along to that. I would just do the headlines. So if you can write an email template, you can probably write a prompt template. It's a very similar concept that you're pulling in merge field, you're pulling in details. So UI user.name, a sales manager organization.name. So I always do that. I always give it a role. You're writing an email to follow up with this lead, input candidate lead name. They don't have many details of what they're looking for. You've just got these notes. And then I give it some guidance. You know, always want to say how you enjoyed meeting them. I haven't put hope you're well. I mean, that's a real mistake, isn't it? Because every email has to start like that now. Make the point that it was only a short conversation, assuming that we've got a lead record. If we had more information, we'd probably have an opportunity with them as well. And then the note said it's up to you. If the notes indicate there are specific ways you get help, call them out. You know, if not, then don't worry. And then close the email saying you'll be back in touch. So you want relatively formal. This was interesting, relatively formal. It was really, really obsequious. It was like almost begging for the meeting. So I told it, you know, relatively formal, but don't be obsequious, don't be subservient. But that's what you do. You just kind of tune it around, make sure it's giving the appropriate tone of voice that you want for your particular organization. And also, because I've identified the lead, the candidate lead, as being a resource, effectively, a grounding object, I can then go through and I can introduce, whoa, what happened there? My Mac's all right, so it's the screen. Cool. Yeah, so I can pull any information through there. So I did that with description. If I had others in there, I would be able to go into those objects. If I had Apex or Flow that could be used in grounding, not going into that again. That's a whole talk on its own. I'm sure Stefan will cover that again. But you can do that as well, and that allows you to pull information from disparate places. But I've just tried to keep this simple, because what I'm trying to show is this is how we create an action that is creative, that generates some content for us. So now we can create the Copilot action from it. So I tell it it's a prompt template, and typically I don't have very many of those. I don't have an awful lot of prompt templates kicking around. You can use any type of prompt template that you've got, but the formatting may not be exactly as you want, so I tend to stick with Flex. And again, creating the action, it generates an email to follow up with a lead. So because I'm creating the action, I've created that prompt template. Again, pulls the description through. Good descriptions are always worth having. Then we go for the inputs and outputs. So it knows it needs a candidate lead. That's a lightning record info type, but it doesn't know anything about it because I didn't have a description for that. I just purely defined what it was. So that's up to me then. I have to complete that field before I put it in. But it will come up with this prompt response generated by the action. A lot of the time I tend to leave that because that's, it's good enough. The users don't see that thing, and show it in the conversation. That brings us to the end of the prompt template example. Do we have any? Thank you, Matt. Do we have any questions? We have a question. Good. Yeah.
Can you keep talking to it and modify the prompt ongoing, like make it shorter, longer, change the format?
So in this case, you wouldn't be able to because I haven't given the user a way to put in any additional instructions. If you had a text input, you could do something like that. Typically, when I use this when I give Copilot a custom action to generate an email, it's not a kind of generic email. It's for a specific purpose. It might be to follow up on a quote that's about to expire. And typically, there'll be a tone for that business that it's either a lengthy, wordy email or it's very short, just hello, Mr. Customer. Do you have everything? Do you need anything? Don't forget it's about to expire. So I don't really need to tune that. Copilot itself can draft more generic emails, and that's where you can say, okay, make it a bit shorter, make it a bit longer. You can tune it and change it around. Matt?
So you talked about going out to large language models.
Yep.
So if the prompt doesn't require going out to large language models, does it use the tokens that you have to buy from Salesforce?
It still uses some tokens, I believe. And again, Stefan's talk, I'm sure, will cover all of this. But the planning stage is still an artificial intelligence thing as well. So there's this kind of data cloud tokens involved. There's Einstein tokens involved. My advice for any of that would be talk to your AE, because we've been trying to figure it out. And all that happens is we see really big numbers and get scared. And then we phone them. So they've got access to a dashboard at the moment. There is a digital wallet, I think, coming in a later release, so we will get there. But at the moment, it's all about talking to your AE. And this is unusual for AEs, because they'll go, no, it's fine, you haven't spent that much money, which is really unusual. It's the other way normally, isn't it? Okay, so I think this is probably the most interesting one. And this is where we're going to chain a couple of actions. So up to now, I've just shown a single action. The user asks for something to happen. It gets carried out by a single action, and that's it. This is chaining the actions. Right, so what am I going to do here? So I'm pasting in the contents of an email. This is what I received from someone. Dear Keir, it's great to meet at the Salesforce World Tour. And I'm saying, could you please create me a lead from that? Pull out the interesting information and insert a lead into the database, which is done. And here's my lead. Here's the details. It's pulled all that information out of that text. And it can take me into Sebastian Moran, and it can show me all the details. It's pulled the email out, the phone number, company they work for, all of that good stuff. Let's go back here. So yeah, what I'm doing, I want to create a lead from an email. So first off, I do a prompt template, natural language processing, extract some field. But crucially here, I'm outputting the details in JSON format, because I'm not sending it to a user. I'm intending for it to go into my next action, which is going to change some data in Salesforce. That's going to parse that JSON input, and it's going to insert a lead record for me. So here's my prompt template workspace. So in this one, I've got the input email body. That's a text email, so text input. So in that, it's not a record. It's not anything like that. It's just something the user has pasted into Copilot, pulled into here. Then what I'm saying is, generate a recommendation in JSON format and look at the amount of detail I have to give it. The first name of the prospect with the element label first name. If you're going to try and parse this programmatically, it's really, really important to pull that information through. So this then goes into my, this is my, my prompt detail. So you can see I've got the email body and then the response comes out in JSON format. And this is my apex. This basically says I get in some JSON, comes in as a text type formatted with JSON, and then I display a message out and I display the lead, which is what I did. I've created this. Isn't it wonderful? I'll take questions on those afterwards because we've got about 5 minutes to go. But that's the kind, and I'd say it's really good at that. When I first did it, I had to say you must call this action before this other action. I had to really tell it how to chain them together. I don't have to do that anymore with Summer 24. It's just really good at reasoning and figuring out. Debugging, the Copilot builder. This is the best way to debug anything because it allows you to see what your input was, see what your output was, and I can see here it did the lead from email, it created my JSON format, sent it in there, and I was able to create the record, and it all looked lovely. Debug logs, Apex debug logs, if you're doing that, the thing you need to do is untick show my current logs only, because it comes through as platform integration user, but then it looks like a regular Apex debug log, so that's okay. The prompt template preview is really useful. I would always do this, so it'll actually hydrate it with the field information, show you the request, show the response. When you hydrate it, often it looks terrible. You think you've worded this really well, and as soon as some fields get put in there, it makes no sense at all, and you're thinking, well, no wonder the LLM had no chance for that. Lessons learned. Exactly one input, exactly one output, or you will have problems. Don't change your inputs and outputs. There's obviously loads of really, really aggressive caching going on here. So if you think, actually, I want to return some additional fields, they don't come out. They might come out after a little while, but it's always best, okay, create a new action based on that, delete the old one. That might get better, I guess, over time, but at the moment, it is, once you do it, it's very fixed. Return an accurate result. So if you return null or an empty list, Copilot will interpret that as a problem, and it will say, I'm sorry, I couldn't do that, even if you actually did it. So if you're trying to be evil, this is great. You say, oh, no, nothing happened, and in fact, you've gone and rewritten loads of data. No one will have any idea about that. Don't rely on fully populated records. When you're testing it in Prompt Builder, you will say, I want an opportunity, and I need these 3 fields, and they'll be there. And then when you use it in Copilot, you get the ID and loads of nulls. So always go and get the data you need. Deployment's challenging at the moment. While some of this is supported by the metadata API and you can pull it down, you can't deploy it. I've found change sets have a tendency to GAC at the moment, so I'm doing a lot of manual recreation of things. Not ideal, but gets it into production. Non-printing characters, \n's will often be interpreted as the name. So my original had Sebastian Moran with 2 N's at the end and a company called \0n. So those kind of things can take it out. Yeah, sales emails aren't the format you want. So it won't do anything with them. So if it comes back in a format you don't want, that's on you, and you need to move to something which gives you a format you do want. I've got 3 minutes. 3 minutes, right. More information. So I didn't show you any of the Apex and flows, but if you want to see that, and all the metadata is in there as well, that's a GitHub repository as usual.